In school, they don't teach you how to save money. In school, they don't teach you how to pay your taxes.
Financial stresses actually reduce your IQ by 11%. Canadians need real financial planning advice. Cutting out dollars, pretending to put money in, taking money out, that's just not financial literacy. I think it's a mockery of our intelligence, to be honest. I empower my clients through the education of financial literacy, like not only what to do, but why you should do it. Using debt, such as a mortgage, to build our assets, to build our wealth, to create cash flow is actually the right way. Are you buying real estate or are you a real estate investor? There is a drastic difference. Canadians no longer are looking to pay off their mortgage. Density is the highest vibration a person can achieve. And how do you do that? Through self-care.
Welcome to episode 2 of Lending Pulse, the podcast that brings you closer to the people and ideas shaping the real estate and mortgage finance world. I'm your host, Drew Sally, and today I'm joined by somebody who truly stands out for her approach to real estate, finance, and wealth building, Pam Setia. Pam is a realtor at Remax Millennium, founder of What the Financial, and somebody who believes that a mortgage is more than a loan. It's a critical part of your path to financial freedom. We'll talk about wealth strategy, personal growth, mental wellness, and how real estate fits into a bigger financial picture. Let's jump in. Pam, thank you again for joining us. Let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to get into real estate?
Well, Drew, first of all, thank you so much for having me at the Lending Post. What inspired me to get into real estate and financial planning?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I worked 20 years in the financial industry, and a lot of times when I was dealing with my clients, I would continually say, what the financial, of course, kind of thinking about who created their financial plan. And the number one challenge that I found is, regardless of the professionals they were dealing with, those professionals were not talking to each other. They weren't putting clients in the center of it. So I created What the Financial out of frustration for my clients and out of absolute drive to create true financial freedom, regardless of market conditions. So that's actually what inspired me initially.
You had a huge first year, Rookie of the Year in 2019. What helped you get such a strong momentum right out of the gate?
Well, if you think about strong momentum, first of all, that's very personal, meaning what I think is strong, I haven't achieved it yet. So that's really important for me to know. But thank you for sharing that. When I look at real estate, I don't look at real estate as I need to buy my client the perfect home. I look at it as an asset building project. What that means is what to buy, when to buy it, what is my client hoping to achieve? I put my client at the center of it all. When you put your client to the center of your financial plan or your goals or your strategy, you're going to achieve it. And what I find is that in Canada, there's 2 ways to grow your wealth. It's either through investments, which can generally be a lot of work because you have to look at the market, you need to understand how investments work, or real estate, hold strategy, tactical shifts, whatever it needs to be. But the reality is using real estate as a wealth builder has been key and integral to my client's future and financial future, which is what I want to do.
I've noticed a lot of agents, they're really deal centered. People want to see those commission checks and, it's all about doing the deal today. And people forget to focus on the client. So that's really important. What were some of the challenges you faced early on and how did you overcome them?
Well, before I get into that, it's funny that you say realtors are focused on the deal. Because when people ask me what business I'm in, as you know, I'm triple licensed. What business I'm in the business of relationships. And what that means, I put my client relationship first. Whatever comes out of that, I use that, I think of that as a privilege, as an opportunity to grow their portfolio. So I just wanted to highlight that for a quick moment.
You went on to found WTF, What the Financial. So what was the idea behind combining wealth education with real estate consulting?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure if you know, but financial stresses actually reduce your IQ by 11%. Now, this is not me saying it, but it's scientifically proven. That means your ability to think is diminished. If you have a client who's trying to build true financial wealth and their ability to think is diminished, how do you think they're going to get to that goal? If this is a scientific fact that we are now spending, so when I was working at the bank, they were now spending a lot of money to bring out these things under behavioral finance. If we're looking to build wealth and we understand that fundamentally when we're in financial stresses, we're equivalent to a physical attack, how do we expect anyone to build a financial plan? So looking at that and looking at the fundamental challenges that we are facing look at the economy, look at the challenges people are facing today. This is why I took the 2 and married them and said, you know what? How do I navigate? It's one thing to manage someone's money. At What the Financial, we make you money. We build you to the 1%. There is a huge accountability shift. And through financial planning and real estate is how I create that for my clients.
Right. I've noticed that, in school, they don't teach you how to save money. In school, they don't teach you how to pay your taxes. When you're living your life and, you're married, you have kids, and now you're also dealing with the stresses of trying to save money, it can be stressful. That's why you need a really good person with a good financial background to help guide you through those challenges, those financial hurdles, and, making those milestones in your journey.
Well, I don't know if you know, but the government of Canada actually came out with a financial literacy program. And, it's incredible what they did. It was, you can go on the government website and you can cut out your Canadian dollars and kind of figure out how much you're going to spend. But the reality is Canadians need real financial planning advice. Cutting out dollars, pretending to put money in, taking money out, that's just not financial literacy. I think it's a mockery of our intelligence, to be honest. So the way I look at it is I empower my clients through the education of financial literacy, like not only what to do, but why you should do it. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how many professionals there are, regardless of who's in political power, regardless of where the economy is going, when the curtains fall, when you no longer can work, who's actually taking the brunt of their financial plan?
Absolutely.
It's you. So then, therefore, this is why our whole mantra is empowering you to financial freedom. We take it from a financial planning and an education approach to it.
Awesome. Let's dive deeper into the roles mortgages play in a larger financial plan. You often talk about asset building. How does a mortgage help a client build wealth through equity and appreciation?
Well, here's the thing. Here's something that the rich do that we don't really talk about often, but it happens. They use debt as leverage. They use it to build assets. Debt is not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it's not helping you grow your assets. In fact, we have a big problem in Canada. We talk about it all the time. Man, my taxes are so high. Do we get taxed on debt?
No.
No. So therefore, using debt such as a mortgage to build our assets, to build our wealth, to create cash flow is actually the right way. You always want to consult with an accountant because I'm not an accountant. I do work with a lot of accountants to make sure my clients get the right advice. But this is exactly how you can use a mortgage to build wealth by using the right type of mortgage to buy assets that you normally could not afford, or you shouldn't be buying cash anyways.
Right. Mortgages allow people to use leverage, putting down a smaller amount to control a large asset. How do you explain this to clients, especially those who might be hesitant on taking on debt?
Well, it also hedges you against losses. So having a mortgage, having equity, and the mortgage and the market resets 20%, you paid all cash. You're losing your equity. If you have mortgage, like a mortgage against it, the equity's there. Yes, you're losing it. You're going to create a tactical shift, et cetera, so forth. But you hedge yourself from those losses too. So sorry, could you repeat that question?
So mortgages allow people to use leverage, putting down a smaller amount to control a large asset. So basically, we can take a little bit of money, like let's say we have a little bit of savings, instead of going to take that $100,000 to go purchase something for 100,000, we can leverage that 100,000 to take on good debt.
Right. But what you also haven't considered, and this is something that I talk about with my clients in terms of financial planning, you take a small amount of money. Let's say, you buy a pre-construction and you're putting down a small amount of, whatever deposit, and you have a deposit structure. Day one, that deposit locks you into, purchasing an asset at a greater value. When the market performs and rebounds, which we're expecting for 2025 is 2026, do you think it's increasing, your deposit amount, or is it increasing? Is the market increasing on the purchase price?
Absolutely.
So then therefore, using a smaller amount of money to be able to participate in a market that we anticipate growth on actually puts us in a better position for financial growth.
This reminds me of a good question, actually. How do you feel about long-term pre-con investments right now?
Actually, it's a big part of my client's portfolio. So I do something called staggered real estate. People do something called staggered GICs. I mean, our older listeners will know, or viewers will know. It's when you have a GIC, you have $100,000 and you have one, in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years. And generally what happens is a client will have a maturity in 3 years or 5 years, then have access to those funds, and they'll, rebook the GIC and move it forward. I do the same thing for real estate. I get my clients to really take a look at real estate as an asset builder and say, look, with this 100,000, and look, it's not that you don't have to be a responsible buyer. You of course have to be able to close. So I never look at assignments as part of that strategy. But having a real estate project that's closing today, let's say resale, because the market allows it. The market is, not doing well, which means if I have access to cash, I can access and purchase something at a much lower price than I normally could. And then setting up Real estate, that's going to be closing maybe in 3 years. In today's market, because guess what? It's priced based on today's market conditions, contrary to the belief that builders will be basing it on future pricing, because certain projects that were priced now, they didn't consider tariffs at that moment. They didn't look at, because that was not a thing. And now that we're navigating through it, my clients have invested in real estate, and that's what they continue to.
So in some places, mortgage interest can be tax deductible. How does that play into an optimized financial plan?
Well, you have to look at it first. So one question that I ask my clients all the time, are you buying real estate or are you a real estate investor? There is a drastic difference. If you're buying real estate, there are realtors out there that will do an excellent job of buying you that one home, your primary residence, and that's all you want to achieve. And that is great. And I think you should do that. When working with someone like myself, where I look at, I want to help you purchase that first home, but the insight is, I want to buy real estate as an asset. I want to continue to grow my portfolio. That's where I thrive. That's where my company thrives. That's where my focus is. And that's where we kind of put ourselves in. Does that make sense?
Right. So you've talked about how home ownership helps reduce monthly costs in retirement. Can you walk us through how a mortgage-free life contributes to true financial freedom?
Well, think about it this way. You spend 80% of your life working, right? And putting this money towards your greatest asset that we believe, without the realization, what is our greatest asset, Drew? Do you know?
Our health.
Exactly, our ability to work.
Right.
So when we look at that and now we're retired and we put all this money into our home, guess what? We didn't set up any contingency plans. We didn't have a line of credit set up. We didn't have a mortgage set up. But at 65, we can't work, which means we won't qualify. So what I do is when I'm working with my clients and you look at retirement, set them up early enough. Continue to pay your mortgage down. And how it helps you build financial success is you're doing it at a point where you can access your home as much or as little as you need it. Versus, you're 65, you don't have the income, you need to do something called a reverse mortgage, take out the big equity, and sure, there's no payments, but a lot of your equity goes towards interest. So that financial plan of using your mortgage to help fund your retirement, if that's what you need, allows true financial freedom in retirement.
Yeah, I think reverse mortgages can be a good option for some people because, again, like you said, when you're not in that income situation and now you need to leverage debt and you have the equity there, you don't need to make payments on that, right? You don't have to worry about paying anybody or paying anything. You get the money out, you can pay your rent, you can pay whoever, you can pay your medical bills, whatever you need to pay. But again, you're chipping away at that big equity that you saved up over the time of your life. You're essentially not leaving it behind for your kids.
Right. But here's what I'll say respectfully. I agree with you. It's a fantastic option when you're 65. If you're working with a wealth consultant such as myself, that's not part of your equation because you've already created the plan and contingency plans to make sure that when you are 65, you have access to funds. In fact, your portfolio is healthy and you can take funds how you need based on, of course, keeping taxation in mind, ensuring that all your basic and necessities are met for.
So let's talk about HELOCs. How do you help clients access home equity for emergencies, investments, or large expenses?
I go to Lending Hub. We talked about this.
Absolutely.
We use HELOC as a mechanism where our clients, so we do recommend clients take HELOCs when they're looking at, look, I don't know what I'm going to be using these funds. I just need to know I have access because I no longer have the income. I'm going to need money. And also for clients to say, look, I don't need 100,000 right now. Maybe I only need $150 this week. And it allows them to really manage their funds. This is why budgeting is important at any stage, budgeting yourself and using a HELOC and making sure you manage how much you're using. It is a great and effective way without having a principal plus interest payment to be, responsible at a later life stage.
I find that, when you're paying down your mortgage over time, you kind of see this equity balance grow, and it can be a little bit easy to kind of dip into your home equity savings. But at the end of the day, you're doing two things when you get a mortgage and you're investing in real estate. You're looking for asset appreciation and property value, and you're looking to pay down that mortgage balance. And doing two of those things increases your equity. But once you use those home equity loans, that's why I try to recommend people, we save these for emergencies and we don't use them like credit cards, because you're taking away at that bottom chip of your equity and your long-term savings as well. So could you share a client story where a smart mortgage plan helped somebody reach a major financial milestone?
Well, actually, I have many stories, but one definitely does stand out. So I had a client, and like I said, I've been through thousands, where getting the right mortgage has always been integral. But with this client, she became an investor later in life, and had the privilege of helping kick off that journey. We just stepped into our eighth investment during this
Wow.
market, and setting up the M1 solution was so integral because she has not one property but eight. Two are closing next year, six she's managing. It allowed her to quit her job. It allowed her to quit her career of 30 years. It allowed her, see, the thing is, financial freedom, what is it? Dhruv, what do you think financial freedom really is?
I think it's the ability to have time.
Well, it's the ability to do whatever you want when you want to,
Right. Well, yes.
right? So absolutely, but
Because I'm too busy working, so I like that's why I'm like, okay, time for me, freedom is time. Like,
yeah,
but we need to pay our bills, right? So
Mhm.
that's where if you have the ability to do that,
Yeah.
right?
So financial freedom doesn't talk about security. It doesn't talk about working. It's literally the ability to do what you want when you want to. Right.
Absolutely.
And so when I'm able to help my clients achieve that through the art of, real estate, and I put the right mortgage solution there, guess what? They're not freaking out. Oh my God, this mortgage doesn't work for me. Or, oh my gosh, I need to take out equity, but Pam put me in a 5-year mortgage and now I'm going to have all these penalties. You got to understand what your client's looking for. Are they looking for flexibility of payment? Or are they looking for flexibility of being able to access that equity? What are they looking for? Because a mortgage is a mortgage is a mortgage.
Mortgages can be stressful too.
It can be.
Yeah.
But a mortgage is a mortgage. You can get them from
Yeah.
anywhere. The reason, we work with Lending Hub is because we create strategies. We make sure that we're getting the client the right mortgage, and we base it on their true fundamental financial goals.
Absolutely. What kind of peace of mind or emotional stability do you see homeowners gain once they've paid off their home or locked into a predictable mortgage plan?
Well, I think we need to understand that Canadians no longer are looking to pay off their mortgage. That is the reality. I'm not saying not everyone is, but it's just not happening often enough. And the ones that are paying off their mortgage, they find ways to invest their equity.
Mhm.
Now, I always say consult with an accountant, but any money taken with the intent to make money is a taxable benefit in some cases. I'm not a tax accountant, but I will tell you this. If you truly understand the power of compounding debt or assets, the power of leverage, and the power of good debt, you will build wealth through your main asset, which is your primary residence. So, again, I think it's subjective.
Absolutely. I think, paying off your mortgage sounds like a dream to most people. And,
Used to
especially,
be. I think it used to be.
well, at that time we had a equivalent level of income versus property value, right? And now our property value has shot up, but our income levels kind of have not matched that, right? And it's, you're finding that, just to be able to get $1 million house, now it's like a whole family coming together, contributing to that mortgage.
Well, I agree, but here's the thing. We still have the same dream of paying off our mortgage, but we want others to do it now. That's
Right.
the difference. So the fundamental of paying off our primary residence exists. Now, who doesn't want to be debt-free? But the difference is we are now investor mindset. We are now thinking, how are we going to create income streams that are going to allow us to be financially free? So one thing that we do at WTF is house per purpose. So let's buy you a home. Tell me what the purpose is. For some, it's, I want to buy this house. That's the house I'm going to use for retirement. Great. That's the one we're going to sell the latest, because retirement isn't from now till then. And then I have clients who are like, hey, I want to buy a house and I want to make sure I fund my child's education and their wedding. Great. We're going to put that one on a 20-year plan because your children are smaller, or, 15-year plan. Then we'll do a seller. We'll do an equity takeout. So we do customize to make sure that the equity is accessible. And we do think it's a good idea. But again, it's strategy before buying a home.
Right. You kind of already answered my next question. See, my next question was, mortgage aren't all one size fits all. How do you help your clients find the right structure based on their income, lifestyle, and risk tolerance?
So I'll add again, we call Lending Hub.
Call Lending Hub. How do you weigh paying down the mortgage versus investing that money elsewhere in a financial plan?
See, I think the number one thing is you need to understand what your risk tolerance is. You need to understand what you're comfortable with. What is comfort for one, real estate leveraging, versus investment leveraging is different. You go to a realtor and they'll say, put all your money in real estate. You go to a banker or a financial planner, they'll say, put all your money in investments. I worked on both sides, and I'll tell you this, do both. Do both responsibly. The reason this economy is struggling is because we've bought too much house and we have no fallback plan. We have no assets under management. We don't have 100,000 sitting there that we can pull out in equity. That's just buying a house and leveraging yourself and creating debt. There's no financial freedom equation in there. Because when the market shifts, and it will, you need to be able to manage that home. And that's where we talk about tactical shifts, strategies that change because the market has changed. You don't
Right.
offboard a property because the market is bad. That's what we're having. We have a lot of people trying to offboard a property right now. How's that working out? It's not,
Right.
because there's so many people in it. So I think, really focusing on the fundamental strategies is key.
Right. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, kind of
Right.
do both.
Right. Get it diversified. So if one thing does take a hit, you have leverage to fall back on another.
Well, also, I mean, at What the Financial, we do, geographic diversification. We don't just buy a client 5 properties in Mississauga or 5 properties in Brampton, because guess what? Different cities perform differently. So we
Right.
treat real estate at What the Financial like we treat a portfolio, like a managed portfolio. And we work with our clients, and the client's always in the know. I don't sell, like I said, I don't sell real estate because I want my client to buy a home. I sell it as an asset where my client is happy to participate and actively participate in the growth of the market and understands the responsibility that comes with high leveraging and debt.
Have you ever seen a case where choosing the wrong mortgage product held a client back? And how could people avoid that?
Yeah, actually, all the time. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you guys know, but these private mortgages and these penalties, and you want that house and it's, down to the last wire, you got to close. You accept the deal, whatever the deal is. The difference in some of those equations is, hey, I got the house, but I'm going to lose it in 6 months. Or I couldn't close my home now and I lost everything. See, the problem is when we're dealing with finding a solution, when we're in fight or flight, we're going to take whatever is in front of us. And this is why financial planning is key. This is why working with myself, with Lending Hub, creating a strategy, like people buy homes and they'll come back to us and be like, oh, in 30 days, I have a closing. Okay. If you buy a home, the first thing before you buy a home is get a pre-approval. The second thing you do is 120 days before the closing, meet with your mortgage professionals. Make sure that your plan still works because you need enough time to navigate. And so there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of challenges in that aspect.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I even encourage people to come up to 6 months before
Mhm.
prior, right? Let's get those documents in. Let's look at the details. Everybody's scenario is a little bit different. Somebody might be self-employed, somebody might be working multiple jobs. We got to see what's happening with this income, what's happening with the credit. Maybe you had an old phone bill on your credit card, right? So we have time to get those things straightened out. And I've seen deals like go to private mortgages over small issues, right?
Mhm.
Maybe this guy had a collection from 6 years ago that he didn't even know that was on his credit, right? So things happen. And now when it comes time to close the property, we have to get all of these things straightened out, and good financial planning, like really make sure that you have enough funds for the closing. Another thing that I see a lot is that people don't look into what it's going to take to close the property. The lawyer fees, the closing costs, this fee, that fee. There's a lot of different costs associated to closing a property. And, also when you're moving in, you're going to need money for furniture, you're going to need money for living expenses. So having good financial planning on how much funds you're going to need, not just for yourself, but to actually close the property as well, is very crucial.
Actually, respectfully, as much as clients should be held accountable because they will deal with the brunt of it, working with the right professional, omits all of that. Because if you are working with the right professional, they're going to tell you about those fees. They're going to tell you, they're going to get you to the right lawyer to make sure that they review the contract. They're going to make sure that you're working with the right accountant and making sure that you have your accounting in order. I mean, there's so many clients that just don't have that knowledge. How can you ask for something if you don't even know it exists? So as much as I would like to definitely put the responsibility of this whole process on the client, I would also highly recommend that professionals understand that, adding that extra layer of care, putting that relationship at its center is what's going to differentiate them in 2025, 2026, and beyond. Canadians are looking for advice. Canadians are looking for themselves to be put in the center of that financial plan. It's no longer, I want that home. It's what can I afford? How do I do it? Tell me first before I even venture off into that. And that's why we've seen the market shift so much.
Right. A good agent is always thinking about life and not just the deal.
Absolutely.
Right. So you've built a strong personal brand in a very competitive space. What has your experience been like carving out your approach to real estate and finance?
Well, here's the thing. I knew when I first started, I wasn't going to compete with anyone. Not because I just knew there were so many good realtors out there. There were so many good financial planners out there and mortgage agents out there. I knew I couldn't compete. So when I was working at the bank and I was sitting there, I remember saying, like, how do I differentiate myself? I know I'm a people person, relationships are everything. And then I realized that I wanted to really be that connector in the industry. I wanted to be the pulse. What that means is someone that can weave through the industry to get clients the answer and the approach for absolute execution on their financial plan. I created accountability. And when you create something from that approach, where you're not only looking to help them grow, but you're creating that accountability piece, yes, it's stressful. Yes, I deviate from what to what the financial happens all the time. But the reality is, I win every single time when my clients win. And there's just so much gratitude because I think when I have clients that trust me with their greatest asset, their time, their money, their dreams, and for me to be able to bring that to life, that's where I win. So that's how I differentiate, and that's why I've created such a strong personal brand.
Well, when you go shopping for a car, you can see a base model there,
Mhm.
right? And then you see the car with all the bells and the whistles, right? So I think, that's like more of the service that you have. It's a little bit extra. You're getting this heated seats. You're getting all the creature comforts. You're getting so many things that are extra to just the vehicle driving, right? Like everybody needs to go A to B at the end of the day, but how you get from A to B, that level of service or that level of quality, you're definitely on the higher side, you have all the bells and whistles. So that's a really good value proposition right there.
Well, thank you.
So do you think we're seeing meaningful change in terms of how the industry supports a broader range of professionals and leaders?
Yes and no. And I'll say this. There is obviously an expectation within the industry to achieve certain quotas and achieve, certain standards, et cetera, so forth. And, bravo to all the governing bodies that are doing that. But I think fundamentally, we have to be self driven to create that. And I think what we need to do is remove ourselves from that ideology that, we have to hit X number of deals. What do you want? Like, what's important to me may not be important to you. Somebody might say, hey, I just want to close 2 deals a quarter. Someone like me might be a little bit more aggressive. So I think, are we supported? Yes, but I think the problem is we look for support in the wrong places.
Right.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. And at what the financial and my personal belief is I do everything with excellence. And that's irrespective to who's supporting my vision. When I started this company, man, it was hard. And it's still hard because I will not ever negotiate my integrity and my vision for financial freedom for my clients. Period.
How do you feel about some agents that wear sweatpants to the office?
Good for them.
Good for them.
Yeah. But I always say how you dress is how you feel. If that is your thing and that's your best foot forward, then great. It really is a personal approach. For me, it's always been, how do I want to show up? When I meditate, which I do often, it's like, how do I want to show up today? And like I said, for me, it's about excellence. And so what does excellence look like? It's not just in the way that I'm dressing. It's in the way that I make my coffee. It's in the way that I say hello and good morning. And I make myself 100% available because I always say, when I meet with somebody and I say hello, the energy exchange could be one of two things. You can meet me and say, man, that was a great hello. And I'm really excited to be around her. Or damn, I don't want to be around her. I'm hoping I'm not the opposite. Like I want people to be excited, as excited as I am to be, because I think that instead of thinking, man, I got to do this today. What I did was about 2 years ago, I put in alarms on my phone. And instead of saying, I have to do this, like, go to the mall or whatever, I get to do that because that is a privilege.
That's a really good way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to new agents looking to build not just a business, but a mission-driven career?
First of all, identify your mission. Why are you why are you joining the industry? What do you want? The problem is we're looking for such outward results without even asking ourselves what's important. without actually solidifying not only what do we want to do, how we want to achieve it. It's not only about what, it's also about how. So really get to know yourself. Authenticity, that's what I achieve. And how I do that, it's done. Authenticity is the highest vibration a person can achieve. And how do you do that? Through self-care. So self-love and then self-care.
Absolutely.
So start from within and kind of figure out where you want to be. And then from there, kind of say, okay, what do I want to do? And then how am I going to do it? So one thing that really works with me, and I'm a little extra, I'm very organized. Like I need to know what's happening at a drop of anything. Like it's a drop of a pin. I need to know what client, what deal, when are they closing, what's happening. And so I've created my own templates to make sure that if I need to know something about a client, I can pull it up immediately. That, people say it's a lot of
Pam was
control.
always like the organized one in school, had all of her binders color coded.
I did.
See, I was the guy, I had my notes in my backpack. It was no folders, just going straight in the back. I got notes open from last week, right? So,
Oh my gosh.
building, I think one of the biggest piece of advice I would give to new agents is pick your niche and build your systems. Those are the two biggest things that are going to drive success for any new agent.
Well, I was going to get to that. When it comes to niche, how do you identify your niche?
That's a great question.
Right. So I always say, what's missing in your life? Pick that. What excites you? What do you wish you had when you wanted to buy your first home? See, we are a reflection of what we hope to achieve, right? Because where we're at, we probably have goals. How do we get there? Whatever that gap is, and then build your niche.
Yeah, I find that also, when you're picking the types of people that you want to work with, pick the types of people, not that just have money to do the deals. Of course, they have money to do the deals, but also the types of characters and personalities that reflect you. So if you're the type of person that likes to be out late nights, go work with the types of guys that are in the clubs. You can go have fun, pop a bottle, and go network. Or you could be working with seniors and you could be in doing things during the daytime, right? You could be more family orientated, right? You can be more social, right? So how you pick your niche and also the demographic of the people that you work with is very important too.
Absolutely. Actually, I was listening to on Instagram, something popped up and they said, if you sit next to a high performer just in proximity, you increase your performance by 15%. You sit to someone close proximity that is not a high performer, you actually reduce your productivity by 30%. So like I said, it's not just one thing. I would recommend take a look at your circle, look at who you're networking with. Your network is your net worth. Like all those things, they all apply, but first start at base. What's important to you and why are you
This is
here?
like the first thing I said today, you're only the best of your company that you keep, right?
Yes.
So you've worked with a wide range of clients. What are some of the unique considerations when helping high net worth individuals or luxury buyers?
So with them, it's very interesting because you think they'll come up with a laundry list of things that they absolutely must have. They're really looking for advice just as much as the next person. And I think that was a very humbling experience for me because I would deal with some very high profile clients and realize that they're looking for real advice. And, at that time when I started to venture into the market, I was like, they're going to tell me what to do. And when I realized like, no, they actually truly want the advice. I remember one client, amazing client, had his own investment firm for many, many years, came to me and said, how come when I come to you, you ask me all the questions that my lawyer and accountant should have been able to answer? And I'm like, no, I'm giving you the questions to ask so your lawyer and accountant can answer. See, when we go to an accountant, we're supposed to tell them what's happened. When we go to a lawyer, we tell them, what do we want? We need to understand from a financial planning perspective first, what do we need? And then we can go to these professionals. I think in the industry, even whether regardless of luxury or non-luxury client, we expect them to give us the answer. This is why WTF is such a focus approach of what do you want? What do you need? What does that look like? So that was very interesting to me because I thought, my high net worth clients would be like just, a lot more tougher. But some of the best closings, some of the best results, some of the best, even revenue-driven results for me have been my high net worth, where they're like, Pam, what do you think? And that to me, my greatest privilege.
So when you work with Pam, you go, WTF, that was amazing, right?
Yes,
that was the best service I ever. I love it. Right?
Or WTF, what the hell did you get me into? I mean, it could be one or the other.
Are there differences in how you approach service, negotiation, or financing for luxury real estate compared to first-time buyers?
No, like I said, how I do one thing is how I do everything. Period. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, first of all, when you're working with me, you're a first-time home buyer, but you've already indicated to me that you want to increase your real estate portfolio. The biggest misconception we have is like, oh, the high net worth need to have this. But the problem is, like Will Smith's dad said, you build a wall. Don't worry about the wall. You lay that first brick so well,
Brick by
brick
brick,
by brick.
brick by brick.
And if you're building a client's portfolio and you know their greatest asset is time, that first time home buyer needs that same level of experience, the same level of care, that same level of negotiation power that someone with high net worth is, because we're going to take them from 0 to 100. We're going to take them to the 1%. And this is why everything I do it with excellence, regardless of where my client's starting off.
I find like one of the hardest things about tapping into the luxury buyer market is building trust and long-term relationships. With clients that are purchasing multi-million dollar properties,
Mhm.
right? How do you handle that?
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, my clients are more, I'm in the relationship business. So what that means is whether it's a multi-million dollar property or it's a small property, I treat it the same. So I can't comment on other people and how they handle it at all. But I can tell you this, I don't advertise to just get clients from anywhere and anywhere. Like it's just not part of my business model. It's really, I want to see if there's synergy between myself and my client, and can I build them to the 1%? Are they interested in that approach? So, again, going back to that, I wouldn't have the exact answer for that.
What advice would you give to other agents or mortgage professionals looking to break into the luxury market?
I don't know if I'm qualified to say that,
I
to
think
be
I
honest.
think you're qualified. Pam is very qualified.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I would say, lead with heart. Being authentic is way more important. Like they'll be able to tell if you're not authentic. They'll be able to tell if the deal is being seen as a deal, or is it being seen as truly something that's going to help them and their family elevate. So, when you get into the luxury market, just really focus on being your authentic self,
Building
um,
relationships.
building relationships, networking. Like I said, sit next to a high performer, learn. And always, the one thing, even though I'm one of the only triple licensed professionals in Canada, launching multiple different avenues to give Canadians access to our financial planning platform and our education platform, I never consider myself knowledgeable. I never consider myself as knowing everything. I actually walk into every single meeting as I'm the student, because we, humans, we are the happiest when we grow. So I lead every interaction, every situation, say, am I growing? Am I growing mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually? That's important to me. So what I would say is when you walk into a room, when you walk into an industry, really go in as a student, because it will be tuition of life. You'll lose a deal. You'll gain some and you'll lose some. And that tuition of life is going to teach you a lot of valuable things. And so just go in as a student, and you're constantly learning, and be humble about it. And don't be afraid to be authentic.
When I look at money, I don't look at it as like, I'm doing this for a amount of dollars. I'm doing it for the ability to, provide my family with a home, provide my family with transportation, provide my family with amenities where they can have a comfortable life, and the money is the means to do that.
Well, the second step to that is, what does comfortable look like? Everything has a price tag. So I love the fluff, happens all the time. If you go into my office and you look at my board, it actually tells you not only what I want to achieve, what the cost is. So we talk about armed goals with the financial armed. What that means: attainable, reasonable, measurable, defined by economic value, and defined by date. Because regardless of, we say we want to provide our family this, tell me what it's costs. The only reason we fail in providing is because we didn't actually establish how much it's going to cost us. So how many hours do you need to put in? What do you need to do? Now, again, the way that I think, it is kind of crazy. It's a lot. But the reality is, if you write down your goals, you're 42% more likely to achieve them. So I love your goal. Tell me how much it's going to cost me. That's that. And when you start putting numbers in, because that's a tangible number, you can then divide it by the number of hours or by number of deals that you need to achieve. Now you can do something about it.
We can make it real.
Exactly. Otherwise, saying, I want to have a great life for my family. Great. A great life for someone across the globe might be having $100,000. And here we're like, yeah, unless we hit a couple mil, it's not a great life. Like, we don't know. Everybody, it's very subjective. So get really good at figuring out your goals.
So Pam, wrapping up and switching gears a little bit, as we look ahead to the next federal election in Canada, real estate continues to be a major voter issue. The Liberal government has focused on programs like the first-time homebuyer incentive and increased housing supply. From your perspective, have those programs made a meaningful impact?
To be honest, yes and no. Yes, it has for a political standpoint. They're great to hear about, but the average Canadian still doesn't know how to get into the primary residence. So, when we provide a solution, but we don't have that fundamental financial literacy aspect, and we're like, look, we came up with the solution. Everyone's like, wow, how the heck do I get there? So, yes and no. My answer is yes and no.
And a good thing to look at is like only about like 10 or 20% of our population are first-time home buyers just breaking into that market. But most of our buyers are investors, right? Most of our buyers are looking to pick up their second property or a cottage property or another home,
I
right?
actually think that there are a lot more first-time home buyers. We just haven't motivated them the correct way. So, for example, like we have access at Lending Hub with the 0% down payment structure. How many people know about it? Probably not many. How many calls are we going to get about it? Probably a lot, right? If we look at the government program where they were offering a certain percentage down payment, how many people knew about it? Not many, but was it there? Absolutely. The reality is programs are there to win political elections and they're wonderful. But if you as a Canadian want to really get into the real estate market, you got to find the right professional. I would love to think it's me and figure out what the next steps are. Fundamental, actionable items that are going to get you to there. So my answer is yes and no.
So on the other side, conservatives have often talked about reducing red tape for builders and loosening restrictions on development. What effect do you think that these strategies could have on affordability?
So when we talk about red tape, what are the key factors that are holding builders from building more? First of all, right now we have projects that are available. What's stopping Canadians from buying it? There is inventory, right? But we're now looking at the political landscape. What I always say, and to be honest, regardless of who goes in power, the reality is this: your financial plan is your responsibility. You need to navigate the landscape how it is. I always have clients who buy regardless of market conditions. Do you know why that is? Because respectfully, we don't care who's in power. Doesn't mean that it's not important. Two different things. What that means is regardless of who's in power, my financial plan needs to work. I need to be able to get into my primary residence. That's what's important to my clients. And that's where I put my focus. And we navigate and we change the plan based on what's happening, whatever political issues are coming in. Tariffs came in and it was a big thing. My clients, I'm like, hey guys, you know what? Tariffs are a concern. Don't be concerned because the property that you purchased was, based on whatever was happening in the market. By the time you close, rates will be lower. Tariffs may or may not be a thing. But the reality is that your investment plan, your purchase still makes sense. See, it's not actually about which programs work or not. I want to know how confident your client is in your capabilities.
Hey, Pam, you're answering my questions before I can even ask them. Right. My next question was, how should real estate professionals and mortgage agents prepare to navigate the market depending on which party comes into power?
Become knowledgeable on your process. Become knowledgeable on what programs can actually help your clients. Be aware of what the political stances are and how it's going to impact, because some clients actually want to hear about it. And some are like, what's next for me? So be knowledgeable, be aware. But if you have a bias or a fear, understand you'll translate it in your conversation. Have confidence in what you're saying. And if you're not confident, then do the research. Get in front of the market. What that means is understand where the market is going, understand where consumer sentiment is, understand how these political changes will make a difference in processes and programs, and get in front of your client. Canadians are looking for advice. Canadians are looking for people to really lead the next chapter. So again, get knowledgeable, and if you're not, follow what the financial.
Absolutely. Pam, thank you so much for sharing your insight, energy, and experience with us today. You've shown us how real estate is more about than buying and selling. It's about building wealth, freedom, and peace of mind. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into episode 2 of The Lending Pulse. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and join us for the next episode. And if you're ever thinking about your next step in your real estate or finance, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Sunil or Pam. Until next time, keep your goals in focus and your finger on the pulse.